Hello, Michael Swain here after Kansas football's 31-7 win over Fresno State and here in a new look stadium. And before we get too far into this, I'm going to do my obligation of showing you this side so that we don't get comments about that every single time we do videos. There's your view of the old side that'll get done at the end of this season. But as for this side, man, it looks pretty cool tonight. There's a lot we can get into with this game. I think things started on the right foot for KU, and I think they probably went just about as well as they could have. Stadium-wise, you have to let me know. If you were at the game, drop a comment. Tell us what your experience was like, good, bad, and different. I'm really interested. I have a specific perspective being in the press box, walking around it and seeing it. It looks cool. Was it functional? Let us know. I think, honestly, the only thing that maybe kept it from being a perfect night was a fire alarm that went off in the second quarter. That was very interesting, but definitely, hey, let us know what you thought of the stadium, being around it. Obviously, a lot of work and money's gone into it, but things aren't going to be perfect on a first time. So again, give us your opinion. Want to hear about it. As for the game, man, I think you got to be pretty pleased if you're Lance Leipold leaving the stadium tonight. Of course, there's some stuff that KU's going to want to fix. Too many penalties. I think, tackling, at least on the first drive defensively, was a question. But I think top to bottom, it's a very solid performance. And we could start on offense with Jaylen Daniels, because I think that's going to be a theme of this season. This team is going to go as far as Jaylen Daniels takes it. And KU's quarterback got off on the right foot tonight. You look at his stat line, 18 of 20 for 176 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He looked in control. And you compare it to what he looked like last year, right, where he had the interception against Lindenwood that comes from miscommunication. He looked good against Lindenwood broadly, but again, I don't remember a time tonight where you thought, oh man, Jaylen put the ball in jeopardy, or there was a risk taken that didn't need to be taken. And I think you can compare the mindset that Jaylen has talked about, whether you go back to Big 12 Media Days or throughout the course of camp, of hey, he knows that this is it. He's got to take what comes every game and every snap. And I think you take what Lance Leipold talked about during training camp, where they talked about Jaylen preparing as well as he has going into a season. They talked about how well Jaylen played in camp, and that certainly translated to this field tonight. And I think generally for KU, like, you look at the wide receiver room, it's a bunch of new faces. And who are the guys that stood out in the first half? It's Cam Pickett. It's Emmanuel Henderson. But then you go into the second half and, a guy like Keaton Kubeka shows up. Levi Wentz didn't get a catch today, but he shows up blocking on the perimeter. So I think you can look at Jaylen and then his targets today. And some of that stuff is super, super positive, right? Cam Pickett, it's a guy, if you're a subscriber to Fog.net, like, it's someone we've been bringing up as a stock riser throughout the course of the preseason. Like, he was a guy that made plays in camp, and what did he do tonight? He made 2 really good plays, and he got a little banged up there at the end of the first half. I talked to him post-game. You can watch that interview on our YouTube channel, and he said he was fine. It's just football, got a little dinged up, but it's nothing serious. So for KU, you look at what KU has in Cam Pickett and what he showed. Like, it's exciting stuff. He just kind of gets open. There was a couple scramble plays for Jaylen where all of a sudden, Pickett's showing up in the middle of the field and he's open. Obviously, then you've got the different way that they used him on the goal line down there behind me, where he's in the backfield. That's play action. He goes into the flat. Jaylen finds him. Good block from, I believe it was Levi Wentz, and he finds the end zone. So, it's going to be interesting watching some new playmakers for Kansas this year and seeing Cam translate what you heard about during camp to the field in this first game is super positive. You can look at Emmanuel Henderson, right? The top end speed that he showed tonight, the threat. You can look again back behind me in the first half when he gets the pass interference call. That happens because he's super fast. And it's going to be very hard for a lot of cornerbacks in college football to keep up with him. Now there are other questions, right? Is he the most agile player? No, but he's got elite top-end speed, and that's going to really help KU. So you could see some of these pieces start to come together. And again, the depth at the wide receiver position, we'll have to see how that plays out over the course of the season. But again, a guy like Keaton Kubeka showing up. Doug Emillion got a bunch of snaps. Levi Wentz is going to have his opportunities. And so you like what you saw from that group tonight. Running back wise, Daniel Highshaw, I think, had a solid game. LeSean Williams really popped with his carries. We'll have to see what his status is for next week. After it looked like he had a little bit of a hand injury, that's what he was grabbing at least when he left the game. Didn't come back. Offensive line is going to be something KU's going to have to work on. That was a position that coming out of camp, I tabbed maybe is a little bit of a stock fall, just because the fact that they're going to be working through some things, And maybe it sounds like some of the flags were maybe a little trigger happy from the officials, but still, I think there's plenty that you can look at the offensive line room, whether it be pass protection, right? Jaylen Daniels got pressured several times throughout the course of the game, and because he is so mobile, he's able to get out of it and not have it turn into a sack. But that's something that's got to be improved. I think in terms of run blocking, right, still some progress that needs to be made. You can look at the fourth down play that was just to my right here on this side, where Daniel Highshaw should have had a face mask called that maybe would have given KU a fresh set of downs, but it wasn't called. But still, the offensive line didn't get a great push on that one. So just something to track going into Missouri in 2 weeks when KU's offensive line really will be tested. That's something I think caught my attention tonight. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, and it looked a little bit like 2021, 2022, to some degree maybe even 2023 KU defense on that first drive. Certainly not pretty, really poor tackling, but then they buckled down after that. And look, E.J. Warner over the course of his career has given teams he plays against opportunities to get the ball. He's led the conference he played in interceptions in every year of his college career. So he's going to give KU opportunities. But what I think stood out to me most was the fact that down to down, KU was super consistent. Warner made some good throws on third down. You got to tip your hat on some of them. Some of them maybe felt a little fluky. But the stat that really caught my attention is that after that first drive until the end of the game, KU's defense held Fresno State's offense to 2.7 yards per play. A good offense is going to be, high sixes, low sevens, if I'm remembering right. I'm not in football mode quite yet, so we're getting there. But KU just shut down the Fresno State offense, and that is an encouraging sign. Is Fresno State going to set the world alight this year offensively? No, they're not. But the fact that KU stood firm after a sloppy start to the game was really impressive. A guy that really flashed to me was Bengali Kamara. Been beating his drum for a while now, and he really showed up. The first two plays from scrimmage, he's in the backfield, right? Just a hair away from making a tackle that could turn into a tackle for loss. But then you look at the rest of the game, he finishes the game with two tackles for loss, 4 tackles total. I thought he had a really solid game. You can look at it broadly from a linebacker perspective. John Kamara flashed when he was in the game. Trey Lathan led KU in tackles with 8. You saw KU's athleticism, I think, start to show up there, and you're still waiting for someone like Joseph Sipp Jr. to come back from an injury. So you like what you saw there. And then obviously in the secondary, a guy like Devin Dye making the interception he did, Lyric Rawls making one of the most spectacular interceptions I think I've ever seen, like doing a front somersault while he is picking the ball off. Like, that was an incredible play. So you saw flashes from KU defensively. Again, are we going to come out and say that, hey, this is going to be KU's best defense since the Orange Bowl? Like, no, not ready to go there yet. But what I think you can say is you can see the pieces that could contribute to this defense, I think, having some good moments over the course of the season and maybe not being a sieve. There's some multiplicity to the way that KU lined up, I think, too, that's very different than what KU showed under Brian Borland. So, look, those are just some of the things I think are catching my attention. If you want to talk special teams, we can talk special teams. Laith Marjan making a 47-yard field goal, he made it look easy. He had probably another 5, if not more, yards on that thing. Finn Lappin, the punter, averaging, I believe it was, I got it right here, 53.7 yards on 3 punts. Like, you'll take that, especially after last year's punting unit was the worst in the Big 12 by a wide margin. So, a very encouraging season opener for KU. Again, it's a Fresno State team that had 40 new transfers, a new coach in his first game. Like, take everything, I think, in full context. But it's an encouraging start for KU, and I'm very fascinated to watch in 2 weeks when KU goes to Columbia. How does everything look? Is the offense going to be able to be consistent over the course of 4 quarters? How does the offensive line play in that game? Can Jaylen Daniels continue to play with confidence and make the right decisions, right? That's what makes, I think, a game like Missouri so fascinating in a season like this, where we're going to be learning about this team over the first kind of month of the season. I don't think it's going to be till we get to the Cincinnati game in late September that I think we have a really strong feeling of what this team is going to be. So it makes it interesting. And look, I think the stadium, a game like this and an outlook like this for a season just also shows how far things have come as we enter year 5, right, under Lance Leipold. It's a question of, can KU make the right plays to win in the margins to win every week? It's not, can Kansas get lucky to beat Texas on the road, or can Kansas get lucky just to stay in the game, right? You've got a brand new stadium that's going to bring a big time home atmosphere. Obviously, I think the students really showed out and really, I thought, brought the energy too. So it's going to make for a really interesting season. We're going to be there every step of the way. Check out Lance Leipold's post-game press conference. That's on our YouTube channel. We got plenty of player interviews. We got plenty of VIP analysis coming. PFF grades Sunday morning. We'll do a little, upon further review, if you want to call it, story, where I'm going to go back and watch kind of the first half into the third quarter, because I think there's plenty of interesting stuff that KU showed today that is different than what we've seen in past years. So plenty to dive into. It's going to be a really fascinating season. Can't wait to go along the journey with all of you. Thanks as always for watching. We'll talk to you on Sunday. Podcast with Kevin Flaherty coming, and then we do it all again next week. We'll talk to y'all later.